Your authentic self is a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. It is who you really are, who you always have been, and always will be. This is the first principle of transformational rhythms, the masterpiece principle. A principle is very much like a scientific law. A principle is a generalized observation or description of a relationship between things. It is not a fact, theory, or hypothesis. Take Newton's law of gravity. This law simply describes the effects of gravity. It is not a proof, nor does it describe how or why gravity works the way it does. The masterpiece principle is developed from patterns observed during our decades of research. There is no proof of why or how. It is simply a rigorous observation. The masterpiece principle is why we can unleash the masterpiece in ourselves and others. A one-of-a-kind masterpiece is guaranteed to be inside of each and every person you meet, and also inside of you. For tens of thousands of years, people have been observing caterpillars changing into butterflies. They did not need to know exactly how or why. They just knew, in principle, that a butterfly was somehow inside of the caterpillar. In the same way, we all know centipedes do not turn into butterflies, even though they have similar features to caterpillars. A centipede will never be able to change into a butterfly, no matter how badly it wants to or tries. One of the important results of the masterpiece principle is that transformation, or unleashing the masterpiece, is always possible for us human beings. It is already in us, just like the butterfly is already in the caterpillar. If the masterpiece principle is true, why is it so hard for everyone, including ourselves, to live it out on a daily basis? Well, there is a second identity or persona that we were all born with, called our reactive self. Our reactive self has only one purpose: protecting us from real and perceived pain and suffering. The reactive self is why a 3-year-old will knock her 18-month-old brother down to take a toy away from him. Her younger brother poses an imminent threat to her happiness and well-being by withholding the toy. Because even the most privileged among us still lives in a relatively cruel, relatively harsh world, our reactive self has hundreds of opportunities a day to help us build up our defenses against threats to our happiness and well-being. Every time our reactive self springs into action to protect us, it adds a layer of self-defense over our authentic self. The layers of self-defense build up hour after hour, day after day, year after year. By the time we grow into adulthood, our authentic self is likely buried under hundreds of layers of defense, each one carefully constructed by our reactive self to protect us. Unleashing the masterpiece requires becoming aware of these defensive layers, identifying them, and removing them. At the same time, we need to get better at slowing down the formation of new defensive layers. In order to do this work of identifying, removing, and preventing effectively, we need the remaining principles, practices, and tools of transformational rhythms.